Turin, Italy, January 3rd, 1889. According to the story that came to define his collapse, a man steps out into the Piazza Carlo Alberto. He's 44 years old. His eyesight is failing. His head aches almost constantly. And across the square, a cab driver is whipping a horse that has refused to move. The man watches. Something breaks in him. He runs across the plaza, throws his arms around the animal's neck, and begins to weep. Then he collapses. He would never write another sane word again. The next 11 years he'd spend slowly disappearing into silence, cared for first by his mother, then by his sister, until his death. And here is the thing you need to understand before we go any further. This man, sobbing, broken, clinging to a beaten animal in a foreign city, was arguably the most influential philosopher of the last 200 years. He had already written the sentences that would haunt the entire 20th century. He had already declared that God was dead. He had already diagnosed with unnerving clarity the crisis of meaning that would define the century ahead. His name was Friedrich Nietzsche, and most of what you think you know about him is wrong. This isn't a takedown. It isn't a defense either. It's an honest look at a man who stared into something most people spend their whole lives avoiding, and what he saw there is darker, stranger, and more useful than the quotes on your feed would ever admit. Let's go in. Let's start with the line everyone knows and almost nobody understands. God is dead. Say it out loud and it sounds like a victory chant, like some smug teenager who just discovered atheism. That is not what Nietzsche meant, not even close. He wrote it as a scene. A madman runs into a marketplace in broad daylight, carrying a lantern, screaming that he's looking for God. The people laugh at him, and then he turns on them and says something that stops the laughter cold. God is dead, and we have killed him, you and I. But how have we done this? How are we able to drink up the sea? What did we do when we unchained this earth from its sun? Read that again. This is not celebration. This is horror. This is a man describing the earth cut loose from the thing that held it in orbit, spinning off into cold and empty space. Because Nietzsche wasn't making a claim about whether a God exists somewhere. He was making a claim about us, about Western civilization. For thousands of years, God wasn't just a being you prayed to. God was the foundation. God was the reason right was right and wrong was wrong. God was why your suffering meant something, why your life had a purpose, why the universe had a floor under it instead of a bottomless drop. And by the 19th century, with science, with reason, with the slow erosion of belief, that foundation was quietly crumbling. People still went to church, they still called themselves believers. But Nietzsche saw that the living, load-bearing faith underneath it all was already gone. We had killed it, not with a weapon, with our own progress. And here's what made him different from every cheerful atheist of his era. They thought you could pull God out of the foundation and the building would just stand there. Keep the morality, keep the meaning, keep the comfort. Just drop the guy in the sky. Nietzsche thought that was insane. He believed that if you removed God, everything built on top of God would eventually come down with it. Your sense of good and evil. Your belief that history is going somewhere. Your quiet assumption that your life matters in some cosmic sense. All of it was scaffolding hung on a nail that was no longer there. The madman at the end of the parable realizes something awful. He says, "I have come too early. This tremendous event is still on its way. It has not yet reached the ears of men." In other words, the bomb has gone off. We just haven't heard the explosion yet. In a private notebook, he framed the rise of nihilism as the history of the next 2 centuries. So what rushes in when the foundation collapses? Nietzsche had a word for it: nihilism. The sense that nothing means anything, that there is no purpose, no value, no point, that all our striving is just noise in an indifferent void. And he was not a nihilist, despite what people say. He was the opposite. He was the man who saw nihilism coming like a tidal wave and spent his entire life trying to figure out how humanity was going to survive it. Because here's the trap. When people lose their old sources of meaning, they don't usually rise to the occasion. They don't become philosophers overnight. Most of them do something much quieter and much sadder. They shrink. Nietzsche gave us a nightmare version of this. He called it the last man. Picture a person who has given up on everything difficult, every high aspiration, every risk, every reach toward greatness, gone. All they want is comfort, a little pleasure for the day, a little pleasure for the night. They avoid anything that hurts. They've stopped dreaming because dreams are exhausting. And Nietzsche writes that when you tell the last man about ideals, about striving, about the stars, he just blinks at you. We have invented happiness, say the last men, and they blink. Now, look at your phone. Look at the infinite scroll designed to make sure you never feel a single unfilled second. Look at how much of modern life is engineered to be frictionless, every discomfort smoothed away, every craving met on demand, every hard question drowned in content. Nietzsche described that in 1883. Before electricity was in most homes, he wasn't a psychic. He was just paying attention to where things were heading once meaning got hollowed out. When there's no higher thing to live for, comfort becomes the highest thing. And a civilization of people optimizing for comfort is a civilization that has, in his words, stopped being able to give birth to a star. That's the dark part. Not fire and brimstone, not some dramatic apocalypse. Just this, a slow, comfortable, well-fed nothing. People who have everything and want for nothing and feel nothing and reach for nothing. Content in the most literal and the most modern sense of that word. And he looked at that future, and it genuinely frightened him, because he thought most people, given the choice, would choose it. Okay, here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most of us assume that our basic sense of right and wrong is just true, obvious. That kindness is good and cruelty is bad the way water is wet. It's not a belief, it's just reality. Nietzsche did not accept that for a second. He asked a question almost nobody thinks to ask. Where did our values actually come from? Not are they right. Where did they come from? Who invented them, and why, and what did they get out of it? He called this project a genealogy of morals, a family tree of good and evil, and when he traced it back, he found something disturbing. He argued that there were originally two very different value systems. The first he called master morality. This is the morality of the strong, the confident, the powerful, the people at the top. For them, good simply meant noble, capable, powerful, full of life. And bad just meant the opposite, weak, low, pathetic, simple. The good are the ones who can act. But then there's the second system, slave morality. And this is the one that changed the world. Nietzsche said that the weak, the oppressed, the ones who were crushed under the strong, they couldn't fight back with their hands, so they fought back with their values. They performed a kind of quiet revolt deep in the psyche, and they flipped the whole scoreboard. Suddenly the traits of the powerful, pride, strength, dominance, those became evil, and the traits of the powerless, meekness, humility, patience, obedience, turning the other cheek, those became good. Being unable to strike back got rebranded as the moral high ground. Weakness became virtue. He had a specific word for the engine behind this, ressentiment. It's French, and it means more than resentment. It's a deep, festering, creative bitterness. A hatred so intense that it doesn't just want revenge. It invents an entire moral universe designed to condemn the people you can't defeat. Now, I want to be careful here, because this gets Nietzsche in trouble. He is not saying, "Go be cruel." He is not handing you permission to be a monster. That's the lazy misreading, and it's the one that got him tangled up with some of the worst people in history. What he's actually doing is far more unsettling. He's holding up a mirror and asking, how much of what you call your virtue is actually just your inability disguised as a choice? How much of your "I'm taking the high road" is really "I couldn't win, so I decided winning was evil"? How much of your morality is love, and how much of it is quiet, ancient revenge wearing a halo? That question doesn't go away once you've heard it. That's the point. He wanted it to sit in you and rot a little. Because only after you've seen where your values came from can you decide whether you actually want to keep them. So the foundation is gone. Meaning is not handed to you from above. Your morality might be an inheritance you never chose. The abyss is right there. Now what? This is where Nietzsche stops just diagnosing the disease and starts reaching for something like an answer. And his answer is not comfortable, and it's not easy, and that's exactly why he believed in it. First, the will to power. This is another one people butcher. It sounds like it means the desire to dominate other people, tyranny, conquest, boots on necks. That's not it. Nietzsche meant something deeper and more basic. He meant the fundamental drive in all living things to grow, to overcome, to expand, to discharge their strength, to become more than they are. An artist mastering their craft is expressing will to power. A person conquering their own fear is expressing will to power. It's the engine of self-overcoming. It's life reaching past itself. And out of that comes his most famous and most abused idea, the Übermensch, the overman or superman. Forget everything that word has been dragged through. Nietzsche's Übermensch is not a master race. It is not a blonde warrior. It's not a person who rules others. The Übermensch is the human being who can do the hardest thing there is to do after the death of God, create their own values. Look into the empty void where meaning used to be handed down from heaven, and instead of despairing, instead of shrinking into the last man, build meaning themselves. Become the source. Say yes to life on their own terms. Become who you are, he wrote, not who you're told to be, who you actually deep down are and have been too afraid to become. And then he gives you the test. The single most haunting thought experiment in all of philosophy. He calls it the eternal recurrence. Imagine a demon slips into your loneliest moment and says, "This life you have lived, you will live again, and not a better version, the exact same life. Every joy, every humiliation, every heartbreak, every boring afternoon, every regret, all of it in precisely the same order, an infinite number of times. Forever." Nietzsche asks, what would you do? Would you collapse? Would you curse the demon? Or is there a way to live, a way to become, such that when you heard this, you would fall to your knees and call it the most divine thing you'd ever been told? He called this thought the heaviest weight, because it forces the question that everything else has been circling. Not is your life good enough for heaven? Not is your life good enough for other people? Is your life good enough for you? So good that you'd sign up to live it again forever, exactly as it is? And the goal, the whole goal, is to be able to say yes. He had a phrase for that final state, amor fati, the love of fate, not tolerating your life, not enduring it, loving it, every scar included, so completely that you would will the whole thing to repeat for eternity. That's the answer to the abyss, not a god, not a rule book, you, standing over your own life and loving it anyway. Now I have to tell you what happened after Turin, because the story of Nietzsche's ideas after his mind broke is almost as important as the ideas themselves. When Nietzsche collapsed, he lost the ability to control his own work, and his sister, Elizabeth, stepped in. You need to understand who Elizabeth was. She was a fervent German nationalist. She was married to a notorious anti-Semite, the kind of man Nietzsche himself despised and openly broke with. Nietzsche loathed anti-Semitism. He loathed German nationalism. He wrote against them explicitly, repeatedly, with contempt. None of that mattered once he couldn't defend himself. Elizabeth took control of his manuscripts. She assembled his scattered, unpublished notes into a book he never wrote or approved, selecting and arranging them while promoting an image of her brother compatible with her own politics. She built a Nietzsche archive. She courted the rising far right. And decades later, when the Nazis came to power, that carefully promoted image helped them appropriate a philosopher they could present as their prophet. Hitler visited her archive. He attended her funeral. It was a profound distortion. Nietzsche repeatedly rejected anti-Semitism and German nationalism, yet selective editing and selective reading helped turn his name into political property for a movement he would have despised. The Übermensch, a symbol of individual self-creation, got twisted into a fantasy of racial supremacy that Nietzsche's actual writing flatly contradicts. So if the only Nietzsche you'd ever heard of was the Nazi one, that Nietzsche is a distortion. Fragments selected, marketed, and forced into an ideology the living writer repeatedly opposed. The real influence of his work runs somewhere else entirely, and it runs deep. He is the hidden root of existentialism, the whole 20th century project of asking how to live in a universe with no built-in meaning. Sartre, Camus, Heidegger, they're all working in the crater he left. He shaped modern psychology. He was mapping the unconscious, the way our noble reasons hide uglier drives, before Freud made it a science. His perspectivism, his suspicion that knowing is always situated and that knowledge and power cannot be cleanly separated, runs straight into thinkers like Foucault and the postmodern turn. Artists, novelists, filmmakers have been chasing his questions for over a century. He didn't just predict the modern world's crisis of meaning. In a real sense, he wrote the operating system that the modern mind still runs on. There's one more line of his, and it might be the truest thing he ever wrote. He who fights monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster, and if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. Nietzsche gazed longer than almost anyone. He refused every comfort. He refused God. He refused the herd. He refused the easy answers. He refused even the resentment that would have let him feel righteous about his own suffering. He looked straight into the empty center of things and demanded that we build something there instead of running away. The illness that destroyed him was medical, not philosophical, though its precise diagnosis remains disputed. But it's hard not to see something almost mythic in it. The man who told us the abyss gazes back, and then in the end seemed to vanish into it, clinging to a horse, weeping in a foreign square, going quiet for 11 years. So here's what he leaves you with. Not comfort, not a rule book, a question, and it's aimed directly at you. The old certainties are gone, whether you've admitted it or not. Nobody is coming to hand you a purpose from the sky. You can spend your life as the last man, comfortable, distracted, blinking, reaching for nothing. Or you can do the harder, stranger, more terrifying thing. You can become the source, forge your own meaning, love your fate so completely that you'd live it again forever, exactly as it is. The abyss is real. Nietzsche never lied to you about that. He just refused to let it have the last word, and now the question is whether you will.